Hello, and welcome in once again to the most accurate podcast here at 444 Fantasy Football Waiver Wire Edition, Week 14. The top 5 must-adds of the week, plus Q&A that I'm sure will cover many more names. If you've got questions, you can start dropping them in YouTube and Twitter chats now. And we will get to them towards the end of the show. We are mostly done with week 13. It was a interesting week, capped off last night by Josh Allen throwing, rushing, and kind of technically scoring a receiving touchdown, even though he didn't catch a ball. He got pitched to on a pass he threw. Wild stuff in the snow. Beautiful game. Eagles Ravens in the afternoon. Not quite as much what it was billed to be. No pun intended with the beaks and stuff. That's a stretch. Has to be like a seabird to have a bill. Anyways, let's get into the top 5 ads of the week because we got a good one. We got one good one right at the top. Jordan Mason is back at the top of the waiver wire column. Now, let's preface this with a couple important things. One, he's rostered in 41% of Yahoo leagues still. So there is a decent chance that he's not available for you. If he's not, that is unfortunate. If he is, you are blowing the entirety of your remaining fab. You are blowing your number one waiver priority. Anything you can blow to get Jordan Mason, you are dumping it all. The other bit of preface here is that we technically don't have a final answer news on what happened to Christian McCaffrey, but it is looking very, very likely that he will be shut down for the season. Had a strange run where he seemed to tweak his knee a little bit, and then a play later, he took a handoff and just collapsed, slid onto the snow a few yards in without being contacted. Very clearly suffered some kind of injury or re-aggravated some kind of injury. This was always going to be a concern with him because of the Achilles tendonitis stuff. And indeed, it looks like he is going to be done for the year again. So we got a couple games from CMC. Really, really tough. Maybe one of the toughest number one overall picks we've ever had, especially since we kept a roster spot for him all year because we believed he would be back, which he was. But everything just went wrong here. So if Jordan Mason is available, unironically, whatever you have left in the tank, you dump it all to get Jordan Mason. He was an RB1 or thereabouts when, for much of the time that CMC missed in the beginning of the year, he missed himself a couple games and played a little bit in a couple others, but was hampered by a shoulder injury. And so that lowered his total or his per game average over that span to RB20. But really, in the games he was healthy and starting, he was an RB1. So I think we go right back to that. He's a must pick up if available. Now, if he is unavailable, but you have a little bit of a deeper league, Isaac Guerrero is not a bad consolation prize because he's the new handcuff, and Jordan Mason has already been banged up this year. And we've seen Guerrero be very good when he's gotten significant snaps and opportunities, as is just really the case with the Christian McCaffrey system, the Kyle Shanahan system. Whoever they decide to plug in there, be they an undrafted player, be they one of the greatest multi-talented running backs of all time, they are effective. So Guerrero is worth probably, I'd say 6 to 7% of fab, which is a good amount if you are in significant need. If you're just stashing someone away for a playoff run and you don't need anybody that bad, and this is just an upside play, it's probably not more than 2 to 3% of your fab. But if you are kind of getting desperate and you need somebody, I think you could go a little higher on Guerrero, either in the hopes that he's carved himself out a role because he's been quite good, or in the case that Mason gets hurt again or re-aggravates the injury he had earlier this year and Guerrero becomes the starter. There's actually a question from Michael Quenzel in the chat that is directly related to this. How much fab should I use for Garendo if I need running back depth for CMC? Really, really tough. Maybe one of the playoffs. Okay. Couple typos here, Michael, but you know what? I'm not your English teacher. I think the basic gist of the question is you need some depth for a playoff run. Yeah. So I would say 4, 5, 6%. Again, it depends on how much you have left, who else is still active in your league, what else is available on the waiver wire, all that stuff. But somewhere in that range, I'd feel okay about. All right, let's go to number 2. Number 2, to my great chagrin, is Nick Westbrook-Ikhine. For the first several weeks of his unholy touchdown stretch, I was trying to ignore Nick Westbrook-Ikhine because it was so unsustainable a touchdown rate. Then last week, I had him in the column, decently high in the priority, and I said, listen, I said what I just said, basically. I've been ignoring this guy, but it's reached a point where we have to pay attention. He scored so often. Last week, he did it again. 21.1 PPR fantasy points with 2 touchdowns on 3 catches, which sounds disgusting and absurd, but that is just who Nick Westbrook-Ikhine is. He unironically has scored 8 total touchdowns this year on 20 catches. Double checking my math. Yes. He's on pace to score 11 touchdowns on 28 catches, which would make him the first person to hit double digits on fewer than 30 catches in the last 50 years. That is the kind of season we're starting to see out of Nick Westbrook-Ikhine. Now, is that going to come crashing down to earth at some point? Most likely, yes, because that's how regression to the mean works. But at the same time, it seems like Westbrook-Ikhine. By the way, we need an abbreviation for this guy. The NWI. I guess we could call him NWI. It seems like he's just carved out a role and a connection with Will Levis that they're always going to find him at some point or another for a touchdown. It's getting absurd at this point, but we kind of just need to maybe be playing him. Admittedly, I would not play him in bad matchups. I would not play him in games with low totals because you want to have better opportunity for points. But week 14, he gets the Jacksonville Jaguars, the best matchup for wide receivers, a game that I expect him to score more touchdowns. I expect him to probably have a good chance at receiving highs in all the other categories as well against that defense. He gets them in week 14. In week 15, he gets the Bengals, who are also awful in adjusted fantasy points allowed to wide receivers. And he gets the Colts in week 16, who are not bad at all as a matchup. And then the Jaguars again in championship week. So it's probably the best remaining, one of, if not the best remaining schedule for wideouts in the entire league. Westbrook-Ikhine has been consistently decent. Last 8 games, he scored his 8 touchdowns. He has 13.1 PPR fantasy points per game over that span, which is better than Devontae Adams. It's the wide receiver 30. And in half PPR or non-PPR, he's even better, obviously. So if you need a spot start, if you've lost wide receiver depth and you need a stream guy, or if you just need a wide receiver 3 or a flex that you don't feel bad about starting weeks 14, 15, 17, maybe also 16 with these matchups, I think NWI might be your guy. Rostered in just 70% of leagues because of his inconsistency or his lack of opportunity, is really how I should say it, and usage. His consistency has been wildly consistent because the touchdowns have been so consistent. I have him at 5 to 6% of your fab bid. I think you can go higher than that if you're really in need. I would hope that you aren't in need enough to need NWI as your wide receiver 2 or 3. Your chances of the playoffs feel low if that's the case. But if they are, if you've somehow lucked in or just don't have wide receiver depth, but you're strong everywhere else, I think you could go higher than this for NWI. He's scoring. It's just that's what he's doing. You can't deny it anymore. All right. Let's go to number 3. Number 3 is Adam Thielen. That's right. Blast from the past. Don't look now. We might be getting Adam Thielen back. And I'm not talking about Vikings Adam Thielen, where he was scoring touchdowns all the time. But I am talking about, well, although he did score this last week, and I think had another touchdown overturned that should have been a touchdown. But what I am talking about is early last year, Panthers Adam Thielen. If anybody remembers this, he was dominating in fantasy football, particularly in PPR formats, was a strong wide receiver one for the first like half of the year or so. Averaging like 8, 9, 10 catches a game, was just unbelievable. And then he got banged up a little bit and disappeared and was not good over the latter half of the season. Then he was not good to start this season, albeit neither was Bryce Young, as we all remember. He got benched. Thielen got hurt, missed most of the year, just came back last week. Well, technically 2 weeks ago, kind of, depending on how you talk about last week at this point. But Bryce Young has gotten better since his benching for Andy Dalton has seemed to kind of round into shape a little bit as a quarterback. TBD if he still pays off the number one overall and the draft trade capital that the Panthers picked or paid for him. But he's starting to look like he might get there. And Dave Canales, if you believe in him, starting to make changes for Bryce that seem to be working. I believe that Bryce will be good, decent at least down the stretch. And Thielen, it seems, is stepping back into that role that he had early on last year. In Sunday's game against the Buccaneers, who admittedly are a very soft matchup, Thielen had 8 catches for 99 yards and a touchdown on a team-high 10 targets. That's pretty nice. Now, he is playing the Eagles next week. They are, I believe, the number one or one of the toughest matchups for wide receivers in AFPA. So that's hard. You don't feel great about that. It is also probably the case that Philly will be smashing Carolina in that game, and that Bryce Young may need to throw the ball 40 times. And if he does, and Adam Thielen has a 20% target share, that's not bad. I believe that's 8 targets. My math right? Somebody check me in the chat. But after that, he has very playable matchups the rest of the season. So I think you should add him now. You don't have to start him. In a PPR league, even in a tough matchup, I would consider him maybe a wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4, flex type play. But if he does well against the Eagles, then I think he just becomes an every week start pretty much in PPR-ish scoring formats the rest of the season. It's wild. The man is 32 years old, I think. I should probably double check that. But it's kind of crazy. He is 34 years old. What? Okay, good thing I checked it. Yeah, he's ancient, but he's good at what he does. It doesn't require a ton of like speed and athleticism the way he plays football. Requires crafty route running and very good hands and getting open, and he does it well. So, yeah, we're adding him, and we're keeping an eye on the Eagles game. Going to number 4, it is Devon Vele. Now, obviously, the Broncos have not played yet this week. They play tonight against the Browns on Monday Night Football. So that will shift the priority and the fab bid amount potentially on Devon Vele a little bit. Again, that's a potentially, because if he's right where he has been recently, then this will still be accurate. But if he has a great game, this might go up. If he completely disappears and isn't used at all, this might go down. I don't think that will be the case. He saw his rostership jump 20% last week from basically unrostered. The week prior, he was in the waiver wire column. I really believe he has locked down the wide receiver 2 role behind Courtland Sutton. And there wasn't anybody else really there for Bo Nix. And Bo Nix has been playing great. So being the wide receiver 2 for Bo Nix feels pretty good. The matchup with the Browns is pretty solid. Very can be taken advantage of. So I would expect a good game from Vele. I'll put the cutoff at around 13.5 half PPR fantasy points. Usually we use half PPR. But the wonderful Addison Hayes, who makes these graphics over here, likes to use PPR. So sometimes I reference those numbers. Regardless, I'm going to set the bar at 13.5 half PPR fantasy points. That's what I expect from him. If he hits that, this is the fab bid amount you want to drop. If he's single digits, you could probably go a little lower here just because he won't be as highly prized. And if he gets better than that, if he's up at around 16, 17, 18 fantasy points, I don't mind going up with this bid number because I think that will be another sign that he has solidly entrenched himself as a valuable receiver for the Broncos and thereby a valuable receiver for fantasy. So yeah, Devon Vele, we'll obviously know more after tonight, but feels pretty good. Has been consistently good lately. All right, last guy, number 5, and then we will get to the chat. Caleb Williams, quarterback, obviously, for the Chicago Bears. There's a couple quarterbacks I like. So if you're in need for quarterback streamers rest of the season, check out the waiver wire column, which, by the way, you need to subscribe to 4for4.com to read, and can do so by going to 4for4.com/plans and using promo code YouTube for 25% off. But I have a couple other names in there. Caleb Williams, for me, is the best of the bunch for a couple reasons. One, he has played quite well against very good defenses. He's averaging 23 fantasy points per game over the last 3 games, aka the post Shane Waldron era, who it was awful as an offensive coordinator. Unsurprisingly, we all knew it in the fantasy industry that he would be bad. Got fired, and Caleb Williams immediately got better and has been really good the last couple of weeks. 2 of those 3 games came against the Packers and Bears, who were top 10 in AFPA. So difficult defenses. The 49ers have been beatable lately. That's who he plays next week. They're banged up. They got obviously beaten up by Josh Allen through the air and on the ground, and through the air by proxy from a pitch by Amari Cooper. I don't expect that to happen with Caleb Williams, but you get the point. And then after that, he gets the Vikings and Lions again, who he just played twice, who are good defenses, but just gave up 26 fantasy points each to Caleb Williams. So his hand is very hot right now. The matchups aren't incredible, but he has played well against them, or better, in the case of the Niners. And I think that the way that this Thomas Brown system is working for Caleb Williams is just too good to ignore. Over those 3 games, by the way, 827 passing yards and 5 passing touchdowns, plus 142 rushing yards in those 3 games is really nice. That seems to be a big part of the plan, is getting him on the move, and getting him running the ball downfield. And I believe that that's probably somewhat responsible for him for opening up the passing game for him as well. So really like Caleb Williams down the stretch. I do also like a couple of the other names. They have better matchups, are very good streamers. So if you can't get Caleb Williams or don't feel great about him, go check out the waiver wire column. The other names are much less rostered and have great matchups again, and are really good streamers. So I like them. But I've got Caleb Williams at around 4 to 5% fab bid. That's the most of the guys left, or the guys I have in the column. So that is the top 5 of the week. Jordan Mason, if he's out there, you're not going to have any fab for these other guys because you're blowing it all on Jordan Mason. Go get Jordan Mason if you can. After that, NWI, Nick Westbrook-Akine, Adam Thielen, Devon Vele, and Caleb Williams. No tight ends in the top 5, but there are a couple tight ends worth looking at in the column. So again, check that out, 4for4.com/plans if you're not subscribed. Okay, let's get into the chat. Starting with, first of all, just happy Thanksgiving weekend to all of you, and to Michael Quinzel, as noted in the chat. And happy holidays. We are now in December, which means you can now listen to Christmas music, and I will not judge you, because I am a hard no Christmas music until after Thanksgiving kind of guy. And we are now after Thanksgiving into December. So may your days be merry and bright. Mariah Carey, let her out of the ice cube, all that stuff. Anyways, Lee Ving says, behind by 14 points starting Bo Nix, opponent had Cortland Sutton. Jameis is on waivers. Okay, I'm not sure what the point of Jameis on waivers is, but if you're behind by 14 point, or maybe you're trying to say, should I pick up Jameis over Bo Nix? Absolutely not. You're not going to win, most likely, because I believe Bo Nix will be good, but for him to be good, it is very, very likely that Cortland Sutton is going to be good and probably score a touchdown. The only way you win here is if Cortland Sutton gets hurt. Devon Vele has a huge game, so Bo Nix is still great. Yeah, that's really the only way I see you winning, unfortunately. If your opponent has Cortland Sutton, he has basically countered your Bo Nix here and is probably going to beat you. Sorry, hate to break it. Uh, how the heck do I say this? Spaghetti or SVGE Germ asks, would you rather drop Chubb or Rashad White for Mason? I have $57 left. That is tough. I will drop Rashad White because primarily of how good Bucky Irving looked this last week. Now, they still involved Rashad White a good amount, and I believe he even got some goal line work. He ended up with 11 carries for 76 yards, so he also looked very good. But Bucky Irving had 25 carries, and Rashad White only had one target. Bucky Irving had 3. So this was against Carolina, who's a very soft run defense. Maybe that plays into some of why Bucky Irving was so used and so good. But I just don't think Tampa Bay can ignore this anymore. Bucky Irving is like, if you just watch the tape, which obviously they're doing, Bucky Irving is one of the best looking running backs in the NFL. I think he might be the shiftiest running back in the NFL. His ability to just slightly adjust course constantly to make tacklers miss is absurd. And every time he gets a hefty workload, he's incredible. So they need to give him a better workload. I think that they recognize that, and Rashad White fades a little bit down the stretch. And I think Nick Chubb theoretically can only get better. We'll see how he does tonight. It's a tough defense, but I would keep Rashad White, or I'm sorry, I would keep Nick Chubb. I would drop Rashad White, and I would absolutely spend all 57 remaining dollars to get Jordan Mason. Jelly of the Month asks, is Hunt droppable with Pacheco back? Yes, he's absolutely droppable. I wouldn't say he's must drop because he's a strong handcuff to a running back who's already been injured and who has, theoretically re-injurable knees or ankles. So, Kareem Hunt's in the same category as many other handcuffs that I've been recommending we pick up all year. So not a must drop, but definitely drop a bowl if you need something more actively startable for sure. He's not playable with Pacheco back and ramping up to full speed. William E says, I'm so desperate at QB, I'm about to risk it with Anthony Richardson for the playoffs and roll with Darnold and AR5. Or do I chance it with Levis? I have survived Stroud. So Anthony Richardson had 2 passing touchdowns on Sunday. He only threw for 109 yards, only completed 50% of his passes once again, and also threw 2 picks. But he also rushed for 48 yards and a touchdown, which is what we needed from him earlier in the year to make up for bad passing weeks. So he's actually been kind of good for fantasy since returning from being benched. He still has a very good chance of completely disappearing. I think that Will Levis is a much more consistent option. He has actually been shockingly consistent lately. I believe it's between 16 and 19 fantasy points in 4 straight weeks. And those were all with consistently fine matchups. His upcoming stretch of matchups looks unbelievable. Spoiler alert, this is one of the guys that I teased earlier in the waiver wire column who has good matchups. He gets the Jaguars in weeks 14 and 17. They are the best matchup for quarterbacks. He gets the Bengals in week 15. They are 30th in AFPA. The Colts in week 16 are 20th in AFPA. You'll notice these are the same matchups as NWI because obviously they're on the same team, and they're all very good matchups. So Will Levis, I think, is actually the most reliable of that group, maybe even over Sam Darnold. And with these matchups down the stretch, I think his floor remains 16 fantasy points, but his ceiling jumps up over 20. I really like that. I think Will Levis should be the guy. I don't mind having Anthony Richardson, but I just think he has a better chance of disappearing again than Will Levis does. So I'd play Levis over Richardson. MacFam says, I just call him a Kine. I mean, yes, but also even that's not super easy. It's very hard to spell if you don't, pay attention or write it 50 times, which I have now done. A spoiler or sneaky difficult, actually. I cannot spell Westbrook for my life. Well, I can spell it, but I can't type Westbrook. I can type Akine better than I can type Westbrook. Every time I try to type Westbrook, I'll put the E, S, T, and B in like the wrong formations. It's wacky. This is a complete tangent writer's problem that no one here cares about, but I'm telling you anyways. Jelly of the Month says, was offered Jamar Chase in redraft for a higher draft pick. Okay. I'm curious what that means. 9-4 and lost several pieces to injury. Do you think Cincinnati would keep playing him through week 17 or shut down once out playoffs? Okay, so I don't know what you mean by higher draft pick here. Like they swap draft picks with you next year, and next year's draft is the draft order determined by record, but it's still a snake draft? Because if so, I do not care at all about a higher draft pick. If you mean like they're trading you a 4th round pick for a 7th round pick or something like that, then that could be valuable, but I would need to know the actual shift in round there. If it's just swapping draft order slots, you're absolutely doing this. You're smash doing this. And I'm probably doing this regardless. Unless it's like you have to give up your first round pick for their last round pick. Even then, I might do it because picking up Jamar Chase when you're 9-4 feels like a very good chance at, like just winning your league. The Bengals are 3 games out of playoff position. They really could use a loss from the Broncos tonight. I don't think they shut him down. I think they have too much like expectation. Like they're not the Jaguars or the Raiders or the Patriots who had no expectations. They're a team whose fan base expected much more out of them and who have played well enough most of the year to like be a playoff team, but they've just managed to lose so many games. I think that they will continue to play their starters all year because of the expectations that their fans have of them and probably that they have of themselves. So yeah, I don't think Jamar Chase gets shut down. If you pop into the chat with any clarification on the draft rule, I'll try to catch up on that. But I'm pretty sure I'm doing this trade almost regardless of what you mean by that to pick up Jamar Chase for free because that feels like a near guarantee to take you through to the fantasy championship and maybe beyond. If you're already 9-4 without him and don't have to give up any players for him. Sandberg says Thielen or DeAndre Hopkins rest of season. PPR lead with bonus points for 40-yard touchdowns or 100-plus yard games. This is tough because DeAndre Hopkins has been good for longer than Adam Thielen has, obviously. Hopkins had 90 yards last week, 35 yards and a touchdown the week before that. Not great the couple games before that, but 86 and 2 touchdowns in week. The Buccaneers game in week, I believe that was 8. So he's been... I think there's a good chance Adam Thielen will be more consistent, but you're betting a little bit more on that happening because we only really have one good game of Thielen to go off. This is tough. Here's what I'll say. I think I'll say it this way. I think D-Hop is like good, but you're not gonna feel great about starting him as a wide receiver 2, I don't think, very often, because he has a chance to disappear in that offense very often. If Adam Thielen becomes what he was last week and was at the start of last season and is that consistently over the rest of the season, you're going to feel good about starting him every single week as a wide receiver 2. If he doesn't, you're going to drop him again or just, sit him on your bench and not worry about it and start somebody else. But with Hopkins, you're going to feel like you want to start him some mini weeks that he ends up being bad, and that can hurt you. So in a weird way, even though Thielen is much more volatile and could be much worse than Hopkins, like overall points per game rest of season, I think I would take him because the upside and the confidence that we could have in him is better than Hopkins. And I think Hopkins is like a fringe guy who you don't ever want to start with supreme confidence. Weird and long, convoluted answer. Hopefully that makes sense, Sam. MacFam says, is Chris Rodriguez an ad rest of season? How much would he be? Chris Rodriguez is in the waiver wire column. He is my priority 4 running back. I do not have a lot of fab on him because I don't think you need to drop a lot of fab on him. I think a few bucks is probably enough, or a few percent, however you want to say it. He's, I don't think he's going to be a reliable RB2, RB3 even type of guy because Brian Robinson is still there and playing, this true RB1 role. And then Jaleel McLaughlin is also involved. Rodriguez looked really good this last week. 94 yards on 13 carries and a touchdown. But this is primarily a handcuff add to Brian Robinson. So it's just a few fab percent, in my opinion. Michael Quinzel with the super chat. Thank you, Michael. Says, Corum, Gibson, Sincere, Garendo, and Jamal Williams. Please rank for playoff run. Dobbins on IR. Need an RB2 out of these. Strong wide receiver, tight end, quarterback, thankfully. So Sincere is actually the only one who made it into my top 4. Outside of the handcuff huddle, though I did mention Isaac Garendo in the Jordan Mason blurb at number 1. So he's way up there. He's of this group is probably the best handcuff. Jamal Williams. Let me look real quick at why this name is even coming up. No reason. Yeah, I have zero interest in Jamal Williams. Did Alvin Kamara get hurt and I missed it? Because I don't think so. I know Taysom Hill's out for the season, which sucks. Yeah, no interest in Jamal Williams. Gibson is kind of an interesting little sneaky flex play. If you need an RB2 out of these, which is what you said here, as in you have to play this guy as your RB2, then that sucks. It's between Sincere and maybe Gibson there. I would lean Sincere just because I think he has a better chance at a consistent role. Antonio Gibson has had a couple flash games, and one of them was last week, but mostly he's been not good playing behind Ramondre Stevenson. And I don't see a huge reason for that to change. Sincere McCormick may have worked his way into being the RB1 for Las Vegas. And if that's the case, he's, I think, going to be your best bet at consistent RB2 numbers out of this group. Blake Corum is nothing but a handcuff, though a good one. Garendo is nothing but a handcuff, though a good one. And Gibson is close to nothing but a handcuff, but a good one. So it's Sincere for me. Daniel Quintanilla. Please rate my pronunciation. Is it just Quintanilla? Depends obviously on where you're from, probably. Hi, you guys have shifted my season. Great to hear. Thanks. 7-5 and heading for playoffs. I lost Hill at tight end. That sucks, my guy. I also did it in multiple leagues. It's really sad. He's one of my favorite players in the league. So sad to see him go down. Who should I pick up? Available: Disley, Kincaid, Hunter Henry, Juwan Johnson, Goddard, Freiermuth, and Fant. Wow, that is a lot of options. Excuse me. Let me check real quick on Juwan Johnson's numbers. He had 7 targets, 5 catches, 36 yards. Okay, so the involvement was really good. I did not include him in the waiver wire column because his production with that involvement was not great. But Taysom Hill had 7 targets. He has had around that or better in many of the last few games. Though a lot of those might end up going to Juwan Johnson, which could make him a heavily target option in New Orleans offense. Now, whether he'll do anything with that is to be determined. Disley would have been the answer, but had a really bad week 13. Let me check on his final numbers. 1 target, 0 catches. So there weren't any final numbers. That really sucked. Dalton Kincaid has been iffy all year at best. Hunter Henry is actually the number 1 tight end in my column. Nope, that's not true. Luke Schoonmaker is, but that is dependent on Jake Ferguson missing more time. Hunter Henry is number 1 if we assume Jake Ferguson comes back. He has been consistently okay. And that's really all we can ask for at the tight end position these days, outside the elite few. Pat Freiermuth is also in the column. He has a decent matchup in week 14 against the Browns, who he just had 4 catches for 59 yards against in really bad weather. Hunter Henry's on bye this week. That is a problem. So what you might want to do is pick up Hunter Henry and Pat Freiermuth or Juwan Johnson and play that second guy this week and then play Hunter Henry after that. But if you don't want to carry 2, then Hunter Henry can't really be your guy. So in that case, I'd probably go Freiermuth or maybe Juwan. Goddard has been super inconsistent when Devontae Smith is back. 4 catches or 3 catches on just 4 targets for 35 yards for Goddard against the Ravens. He did manage to get the end zone, which was nice and saved his day, obviously, but he's not been consistently involved when Devontae Smith is active. So that one's tough for me. Not a great situation. Really sucks to lose Taysom there. Sam Burke says, I am loaded at a running back with Barkley, Bijan, Aaron Jones, and Chase Brown. But I'm weak at wide receiver. Wow, that is an insane running back core. I have 1 ad left for the year by league rules. Oh, though that's a sucky rule. Should I use the ad for Mason from San Fran to keep others from getting him, or use the ad on a wide receiver down the line if I need an upgrade there? Wow. This is such an interesting and nuanced question. So I'd be curious who exactly your wide receivers are, because it makes a difference to whether a waiver wire guy is going to be a strong ad over him. Jeez Louise. I think I would go Jordan Mason here. There's always a chance one of your running backs gets hurt. There's the chance that you can play Jordan Mason in better matchups than your other guys and gain 4, 5, 6 fantasy points on that week, which could be, league changing or week changing. Like the waiver wire guy you pick up at wide receiver and start maybe sometimes over your worst wide receiver. Is he going to gain you more than 4 or 5 fantasy points over that guy? Probably not. And Jordan Mason could do that over the lowest ranked guy in your quartet, which, by the way, should almost always be Aaron Jones, because Chase Brown has been incredible. And I feel like I might like Jordan Mason over Aaron Jones pretty often, depending on matchups a little bit, but pretty often there. So with that being the case, I think Jordan Mason might become a consistent flex for you. I think that would be the move. Also, tell your league commish that the cap on waiver ads move is terrible. That's a bad rule. Do not penalize people for being involved in the league. So dumb. Jelly of the Month says your Christmas music rule is correct. Thank you, Jelly of the Month. And to anyone in the chat who disagrees with us, you're wrong. Shame on you. Respect Thanksgiving. Christmas is literally a one-day holiday, and Christmas Eve is a second holiday that goes along with it. We have expanded it to a season, but it honestly shouldn't get more than a week. It is a holiday. Do you understand that? It is a holiday. It's a one-day thing, but we've somehow turned it into a month. It should not get more than that. The month is stretching it to the max. And I'm not a Grinch here, okay? I love the holiday season. I love Christmas. I love peppermint mochas. But it's a holiday. It's not a whole month. and it's certainly not a haul of 2 months. Let Thanksgiving happen, respect it, eat your food and watch your football, then turn on the Christmas music. That is my rant over. Thank you, Jelly of the Month, for allowing me to do it, though. Jermaine Robinson says, Work League Saga entry number 2. I submitted a trade request for Rachaad White, and I was going to give up Hunt as she is the Pacheco owner. Commissioner was not going to approve the trade because he believed she had no path to the playoffs, even though ESPN said she has 3% chance and not officially eliminated. I had to call him over the phone to convince him to uphold this 1-for-1 trade. Yeah. Honestly, you should get into a different league. Commissioners who do this kinds of things should not be commissioners in fantasy football. They are living in the 15 years past when people didn't know how to play fantasy football and it's wild, wild west, and everybody was insane, and commissioners had to police trades like this. But this means that either people in your league are making collusive trades, and so the commissioner has to police them, or the commissioner just has a power trip issue. But commissioners should not be doing this. Incidentally, like Rachaad White is a better side of that trade than Kareem Hunt by a long shot. So I'm not saying it's like super, super fair, but when she's the Pacheco owner, it does make sense that she'd want to get him. And Rachaad White is on the downswing with Bucky Irving being what he is lately. So it should not be vetoed or unapproved by the commissioner. Quincy Davis says, I'm in first place. I'm 10-3. I won yesterday with all my receivers. Had 6 points. Lamb, Debo, Mooney, Kupp, and Jennings have 10 points. Should I be corn with these wide receivers? Okay, that's a typo that is so difficult that I don't actually know what you're saying, Quincy, unfortunately. Maybe that means done. I just truly don't know what that means. What I'll say about your receiving core is that I like it. I think CeeDee Lamb had a really weird week where he got banged up and only had 2 catches. I don't think that will be the case unless they shut him down for the year. Debo will be inconsistent. I don't feel great about him, but it was a snow game where they couldn't get the passing game or really anything going at all. Darnell Mooney has been very consistent. Kirk Cousins was awful and threw 4 interceptions. He shouldn't be that bad normally, and Darnell Mooney has been better when he's better. So I think he'll be okay. Cooper Kupp has been pretty good. He'll have some games he disappears behind Puka Nacua, and Juwan Jennings I think should be good when Brock Purdy has some solid ground to throw off of. So you should get a few good players out of this group on a weekly basis, Quincy. You kind of had a perfect storm of crap this week. Mac Fam says, hi, Matt. Any thoughts on Saints wide receiver Kevin Austin for Dynasty? Mac, when I tell you I have literally no thoughts because I didn't know the man existed until this past week, I mean, I do not have any idea. My best bet is that he'll be absolutely nothing. He's a Travis Fulgham type of guy who appears out of nowhere because there's nothing else there in New Orleans, has a good game or 2, and then disappears again forever. That's my best bet. I have not scouted him. I don't even know where he was drafted. I'm assuming he was undrafted because I feel like I would know his name if he wasn't. Yep, he was undrafted out of Notre Dame. Yeah. I couldn't tell you, my guy. I'll scout him if he has a couple more good games, but probably not. I would probably just expect him to disappear into the void once again. So weird to see this happen this past week. Very frustrating for MVS owners. Managers, excuse me. Jermaine Robinson went on to say he then ridiculed and said, you know what you're doing, and eventually approved the trade. Okay, good. MacFam says, Jelly of the Month, that sounds like a keeper league question. Yes, that was to the draft pick trade. That does sound like a keeper league question, which is why I needed that clarification. So still haven't seen any Jelly of the Month. If you want to drop something in the chat, let me know. William E. with a super chat just to say thanks for your help and great advice. Really appreciate that, William. Thank you for being here and asking questions in the chat, everybody. It makes this pod more enjoyable and engaging. So really appreciate it. There it is, Jelly of the Month. I'd have to give up my 4th round redraft pick in 2025, get there round 17. Okay. Thank you for the clarification. Smash, 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 smash. Yes, I'm absolutely doing that. I said that maybe if it was a round 1 pick and you were giving up your round or getting around 17, that you maybe wouldn't do it. Maybe. But even then, I probably would consider doing it. And in this case, when it's your 4th round pick, I would absolutely do this. This feels like the type of move that can put you over the hump to win your championship. So yeah, smash. MacFam, by the way, disagrees. Round 17 is way too low for a trade pick for Jamar in 4th. Wait, no. Yeah, I think you might be reading this wrong, Jelly. He is getting Jamar Chase and a 17th to give up a 4th round pick. That's how I understand it. Someone correct me if I'm wrong. Daniel Quintanilla says 8-5 is the right record. Oh, did you say a different record and it wasn't 7-5? Yeah, because you didn't count your win. Cool. Plyler Short says, could any of these guys be a weekly start? I assume that means the top 5. If so, Jordan Mason, absolutely. Nick Westbrook-Akine with his matchups upcoming, yes, he is. Adam Thielen, if he is back to being what he was early last year and what he was last on Sunday, then yes, he is. Devon Vele could be. If he has a good week this week, I think he cracks that territory. And Caleb Williams is a weekly streamer option. So yes, all of these guys could be weekly starts. William E says, I have Laporta and Hawkinson and always seem to play the wrong one. Yeah, that's real tough. I think I would maybe just play. Let me double check what Hawkinson did this week. 6 targets, 3 catches, 28 yards. Jeez. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what to tell you. Maybe flip a coin. It's honestly a coin flip type situation between them. Like, it's not even matchup based. It's just who scores the touchdown or who randomly gets used that week. It's real annoying. Rob H. Well, lots of questions this week, everybody. Thanks. Rob H. says, I need to win week 14 to get into the playoffs. I want to pick up Kraft for my Hunter Henry, as well as Thielen for my Nico Collins. Any thoughts on how to allocate my remaining fab? Well, I don't know how much remaining fab you have. That's kind of important. Kraft is maybe more important here because you need a starter at tight end, it sounds like. Whereas I'm guessing you have some other wide receivers you could start in place of Nico Collins, and Adam Thielen would just be the best one. So I'd probably put in a little more. Well, but Kraft's also a 1 week rental. I think it's probably somewhere between 4 to 7% fab bid on both of these guys. Mainly because I like having Kraft as an alternative tight end. Even after Hunter Henry's bye, I think I might play him over Henry some weeks, given or depending on the matchups. And Thielen, I might consider going higher than that if Nico Collins being out gets Thielen into your lineup, because that means Thielen is consistently a fringe start for you, if that makes sense. Michael Quinzel says, in a tight end premium, start 2 tight ends. I have Kittle, Otten, and Disley and want to pick up Juwan Johnson. Should I drop either or Disley for Johnson, or not pick up Johnson? I would not pick up Johnson. For one thing, you have Kittle and Otten. You never need to go to a third guy except in bye weeks. I guess, do Kittle or Otten still have their bye week coming up? Let's double check. The 49ers do not, so you're starting Kittle rest of season. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers do not, so you're starting K. Dot rest of season. So the only reason you have a third tight end is for injury. I'd rather have Disley as my third tight end for injury because I think he has a better chance to be good more often than Juwan, probably. But honestly, like, I might just go to a different roster position and try to get some more depth somewhere else, because you could probably pick up a decent guy off waivers if one of your 2 starters gets hurt and your 2 starters are playing every week, without question. Aaron Clenedens says, I wonder if Deebo Samuel is even worth keeping as a roster spot. Adam Thielen is starting to produce as well. If you're saying, is Adam Thielen the guy to pick up over Deebo Samuel? It's getting dangerously close to that. Debo's last 3 weeks, awful. 21, 21, and 20 scrimmage yards. Prior to that, he had 8 for 76 and 8 for 86. So as well as some rushing production in those games. And then the week before that, he did nothing. I'm not sure why against the Chiefs. And then against the Seahawks before that, he had 7 catches for 117 yards and a touchdown. So it's kind of confusing why he's not getting that kind of work. I don't think I'm ready to drop Debo just yet. And I don't think I'm ready to bust the bank for Adam Thielen just yet. But I will say one more week of this from both Debo and Thielen in opposite directions, and I would make that swap. I just don't think 1 week of Thielen is enough, and 3 weeks of Debo bad is enough to make the swap. But we are very, very close. Jermaine Robinson says, do you envision punishment for Gibbs in regards to the whiteboard incident? Wow. I cannot pretend to have any thoughts on this, Jermaine. I don't know the mind of Dan Campbell. I don't know how they want to run their franchise. On the one hand, Dan Campbell feels like such a no-nonsense guy that I could see it happening. But on the other hand, Dan Campbell is such a football guy that I could see him being like, benching Jahmyr Gibbs does not help our football team. So I'm not going to do that. Yeah, I really just don't know. And I don't think anybody will know. Maybe if we hear from Dan Campbell himself or from some very reliable inside sources in Detroit, then we'll have some thoughts. But unless we do, I don't feel confident that anyone will be able to predict this. And I think it means you'll probably have to start Jahmyr Gibbs unless you have a really, really good alternative, and hope that it doesn't happen. Reynaldo Rincon says, Russell, Carr, Lewis, I assume that means Levis, Jameis Winston for week 14. Let's look at the schedule. In week 14, Russell Wilson gets the Cleveland Browns in Pittsburgh. Don't love that. Derek Carr gets the New York Giants. Not bad, but he's been pretty poopy. Will Levis, I know, has a good matchup. The Jacksonville Jaguars. And Jameis Winston gets the Steelers. It's Will Levis for me. Will Levis is pretty much alongside Russell Wilson at the top of this group, regardless of matchup. And he has the best matchup by far. Excuse me 1 second. Itchy nose. Sorry to the podcast viewers or listeners. So it's an easy Levis for me for week 14, and he has good matchups rest of the season, so I even like him down the stretch. Sam Burke says, you said you wondered what wide receiver I had earlier when I asked about picking up Mason to keep him from others in the league getting him. Yes, I did. McConkey, Devontae Smith, D-Hop, and Jerry Jeudy. That's honestly not bad. I'm okay running with that crew. I would go with Jordan Mason. I don't think you're going to find someone on waivers that you feel confidently great about starting over those guys, except maybe Adam Thielen, Nick Westbrook-Ikine in some weeks, sometimes. But I would go Mason. Sam Burke says, I would think I would drop Aaron Jones or either Evan Ingram when I already have McBride at tight end if I pick up Mason. Oh, yeah, you're drop Evan Ingram. Drop Evan Ingram for sure. You have Trey McBride. You don't need a backup tight end. King Fam says, Kingsbury to the Bears at the end of the season, ? All systems go for Odunze. Kingsbury seems to be one of the front runners for the head coaching job in Chicago because of the connections to Caleb Williams. TBD what that means for Rome Odunze. He has not been very good lately, or at least not very consistent. And Keenan Allen, I believe, is still in contract. Well, actually, I'm not sure about that. Let me double check. 1 sec. Keenan Allen is he is on contract. Nope, he's not on contract for 2025. So he will possibly be gone. If he is gone, then yes, it'll be all systems go for Rome Odunze. MT Ripper says, I have Hall and Dowdle. Should I swap any for Jordan Mason? Breece Hall? You're not swapping out Breece Hall. I know he's been inconsistent, but you have to roll with him until like 5 straight weeks of crap, which has not been the case. I I would definitely start Jordan Mason over Rico Dowdle in most matchups. I don't if you mean drop Rico Dowdle for Jordan Mason, I don't love that. Is there not someone else you can drop? Because Rico Dowdle is consistently playable as an RB3. But I would rather have Jordan Mason than Rico Dowdle. So if that is the case, then yeah, I'd probably do it. Jermaine Robinson says Russell or Kyler rest of the season. Kyler seems to have not gotten better and not very tough-minded. Wow, savage. Kyler, I don't think was terrible this week. He had 48 rushing yards, 260 passing yards, 1 touchdown, 2 picks. I mean, it's not great. It's like 15 fantasy points, but it's not terrible. The picks are certainly annoying. The Vikings are a good defense. Let me look at their schedule. Seahawks, Patriots, Panthers, Rams. Yeah, it's Kyler. I think Kyler's going to be better. Russell Wilson is also good. I like him as a streamer. Browns, Eagles, Ravens, Chiefs. The Ravens game is great in Week 16, although he was bad against them earlier this year, for what it's worth, which could mean he has no good matchups left, really. But it's Kyler for me. I'm rolling with him, and he's been okay to good, mostly. Michael Quinzel says O'Connell or Rush to go with Goff for a Week 14 only in a super flex. I assume that means dynasty league. Oh gosh. Aiden O'Connell against the Buccaneers is nice, or Cooper Rush against the Bengals is nice at home. Oh boy. I will go Aiden O'Connell, but gosh, does that feel rough. I would prefer that you flip a coin and blame the coin instead of me, because that's basically what it is here. But I would think I would go Aiden O'Connell. Kurt Chisel said, Dan Campbell said it's not a big deal, and if they lose the game because of some code words, that they're not good enough. It's on Twitter per Ari Merov. I mean, true, that is true that he should say that. I don't know if that is gamesmanship to keep the other teams preparing for Jahmyr Gibbs. I don't I say that because saying it's not a big deal, I feel like is a little bit of an understatement. Most people who know football have said it is a big deal, but they have to completely change a lot of their language because of this. So I think it is a big deal. It doesn't mean that, they would lose a game, and he should say, well, we're not going to lose a game because of some code words, and if we do, we're not good enough. He should say that. But I don't know if that means he's not going to punish Jahmyr Gibbs. We'll see. FTBL Masisui says, who should I replace CMC with? Jordan Mason, if he's out there. If not, you're going to have to go check out 444.com/plans to get the rest of my running back priority list. And you can always stash Isaac Garendo, but he's a handcuff guy. So Rob H says, should I roll with Justin Herbert or pick up one of your recommended QBs as a potential fill-in? Herbert's schedule isn't great. Good question. Let's take a quick gander at what he did this past week. 147 passing yards, no touchdowns against the Falcons, who were kind of a good matchup. That's unfortunate. That's really rough. His schedule is Chiefs, which are middle of the road. Buccaneers, great matchup. Broncos, terrible matchup. Patriots, great matchup. So his schedule is not bad. It's actually quite good. I think, I think I would play Caleb Williams over him, and I think I would play Will Levis over him. Play against the Buccaneers. Yeah, it's close. It's tough. It's complicated. I think I'd go Caleb. If you can only have one. But I think ideally I would try to have two guys that you can stream in the better matchups. Play the matchups, basically. So I've said this before, I'll say it again. Go to 444.com, search each of these guys' names, look at the rest of the season schedule, the green, red, AFPA, and puzzle together a duo that you can stream where you're always playing a green matchup. Do something like that if you can. Budsky says Cooper Rush or Will Levis for streaming purposes. Will Levis, and it's not close. Michael Quinzel says, I would never blame you, Matt, for any advice. Okay, good. Still, consider flipping the coin. Aaron Clinidence says, okay, this week I'm definitely in a bind. My receivers are just not great this week. Which guy would you start next to T. Higgins? Devontae Adams, Debo, or Malik Neighbors? Thanks for all your help. Let's look at the schedule. Debo gets the Bears. That's not great. Devontae gets the Buccaneers. That is. Oh, no, he doesn't. Wow. Throwback in time when he was on the Raiders. He gets the Dolphins. That's terrible. And Malik Neighbors gets the Saints, which is fine-ish. I think I go Malik Neighbors and hope in Drew Lock. Luis Perez says, must win week 16. Nix is out. Need a quarterback. O'Connell or Bryce or Carr or Rush. Lol. YOLO. Fixed to week 14. So Bryce Young, who we haven't looked at, gets the Eagles. That's a big no. So it's Cooper Rush here because we already looked at Derek Carr against the Giants. I don't feel great about that. I think I'd trust Cooper Rush against the Bengals. And by trust, I mean hold my nose and play him and not trust at all. And last thing, Michael Quinzel, thank you, Matt, for putting up with my horrible typing. Thank you for this weekly podcast. Absolutely. You are welcome, Michael, and everybody else. Thanks for being here. Big pod this week. We went over an hour. So really appreciate everybody's questions. We are getting down to crunch time, obviously. Fantasy playoffs right around the corner. Really appreciate that all of you are still sticking around. I feel like it means you are still in playoff contention for most of you. And I hope that is because largely of 4 for 4 and this podcast. So have a good Monday Night Football. Have a good week 14 waiver wire. May all your fab dreams and bids go through and come true. And I will see you on Friday again. We will be back after having last Friday off. John Paulson and I will be back for the most accurate podcast on Friday. One last question in the chat before I hop off because I just saw it. Luis Perez, can we still start Thielen versus Philly? Wouldn't he be the relief to the QB pressure? Yeah, I mentioned this in my column. The matchup is terrible. I don't feel great about it. However, I do think he could be the QB release valve, and I do think that Bryce Young will have to throw a lot against the Eagles because they will be destroying the Panthers. So I do think Thielen can still be played. It is going to be a fringe who to start between who you've got and Thielen, but I do think he can be played and is one of the better types of players to have against the Eagles defense, despite how good of a matchup they are, because he's a good volume and safety valve play. Okay, we'll sign off there. Thanks again, everybody. Great podcast. Good luck. See you next week. Adios.